Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the URI Foundation and Alumni Engagement and the Women's Leadership Council, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Denise Hempy, and I'm a proud member of the class of 91, and I currently serve as the chair of the Women's Leadership Council. I'm honored to be part of the Women in Leadership Speaker Series, a program that showcases the inspiring careers of highly successful and influential women and provides the opportunity to share their knowledge and experiences with students and alumni. Today's program is the third of the series for this year. I want to thank you for joining us, and we hope you return for future speakers. I would like to take a moment to read the URI Land Acknowledgement Statement. The University of Rhode Island occupies the traditional stomping ground of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. We honor and respect the enduring and continuing relationship between the Indigenous people and this land by teaching and learning more about their history and present-day communities, and by becoming stewards of the land we too inhabit. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to highlight the Women's Leadership Council. Led by a group of alumna volunteers, the URI Women's Leadership Council supports and enhances the personal and professional growth of URI women by cultivating meaningful opportunities to unite, celebrate, empower, and learn from each other while forming lasting connections and relationships in the community and beyond. Additionally, the Women's Leadership Council supports and promotes the Women Transforming Women Endowed Scholarship, a scholarship that is awarded each year to a woman-identified student who holds a leadership position and maintains a GPA of at least 3.0. Now, about today's program. This session will be question and answer style between our featured speaker, Yahaira J. Placencia, class of 91, and our moderator, Kira Mudd. While you are listening to the program, please feel free to submit questions into the Q&A feature. And if time allows, we'll spend some time at the end sharing your questions with Jay. Please note that we may not be able to get to all questions today. And now I'm excited to introduce our host, Kira Mudd. Kira joined the University of Rhode Island Foundation and Alumni Engagement in 2023 as an Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement and focuses on engaging URI alumni through meaningful interactions like today's event. She earned a Bachelor's of Business Administration in Marketing from Texas A&M University and a Master of Education in Adult and Higher Education from University of Houston, Victoria. Prior to joining the organization, Kira spent 8 years building alumni engagement at the University of Houston, Victoria, and Rhode Island School of Design. She's passionate about connecting with alumni, learning through their journeys and achievements, and re-engaging their passion for URI. Kira, thank you so much for joining us today and for hosting this program. I'll now turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Denise. We are very excited to have the opportunity to visit with and learn about Jay's academic and professional journey that has led to the successful career she has today. Jay currently serves as a Senior Vice President and Private Client Advisor with Bank of America Private Bank in Providence, Rhode Island. And for nearly 2 decades, she has been passionate about addressing the needs of small business owners, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit organizations. From helping to grow a business to realizing its value through a sale, Jay and her team can connect business owners to the resources and capabilities that align with their unique needs. She also harnesses her extensive experience to assist nonprofit organizations on both the board and committee member levels to help further their missions, including serving as a trustee of the University of Rhode Island Board. A first-generation Dominican American and, a correction on my part, actually class of 2001, Jay has 2 children. She's a future parent, URI parent. She has a daughter named Imani, who is 21 and will be graduating from URI this May, and Jaden, age 14. So Jay, welcome. First of all, it is so wonderful to have you here today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. You and I have had a couple of meetings. It has been such a pleasure to learn about your story, and I'm very excited for everyone to hear all about you and your journey and everything you've managed to accomplish in your career. So before we launch into our formal Q&A questions, why don't you start off by telling the audience a little bit about your educational and professional background so they can get to know you a bit?
Sure. Thank you so much, Kira. And thank you for your help so far. Our last couple of meetings have been phenomenal. So this is an honor for me. So I guess I'll start from the very beginning. I was born in New York. My parents immigrated from the Dominican Republic in the early 70s. They divorced when I was about 9, so that was a bit of a life change. I lived in New York, Dominican Republic, and Rhode Island all of my life. And I remember very clearly not having lived in any place longer than about 2 years or so. It wasn't until I turned 16 that I really had stability, and I ended up staying in Rhode Island. So I'll share a little bit more about that later on. But I have 2 younger sisters. I am the oldest of 3. And I have 2 amazing kids, as you mentioned, Imani, who graduates this year, and I'm incredibly proud of her. Shout out to Imani Gibbons, and my son, Jaden Gibbons, who is a sophomore at LaSalle Academy, and he is my basketball star. He is actually 16. He would kill me. And they are my why. So as far as my educational background, I'd say that my education and my career background are a little bit intertwined. And I'll try to sort of go slow here just because there's so many moving parts and a few nuggets of info that I'm hoping that the audience gets from me. So I'll say, I was a non-traditional student. I worked full-time, and I also went to college full-time. I graduated from high school, from Cranston High School East, at 18 in 1991, and I graduated from URI at the old age of 27. So it took me 9 years to figure this whole thing out. And a lot happened between those 9 years. What I'd say is that after high school, I really had no guidance. I had no plan. I wanted to be a doctor, is what everybody says. If you want to make money, you want to be a doctor or a lawyer. Nobody ever says a banker, right? Which is what I am. What I thought of as a banker back then was, when you walk into the banking center, there's a teller. That's the only banker that I knew, right? So I didn't really have a plan to be here, but it's been a very rewarding career for 23 years. So I'll go back, didn't have a plan, didn't have any guidance. I didn't know how to start, as I was the first one in my family to go to college. What I'd say is that after high school, I went to CCRI, and that's where I enrolled because most of my friends told me that's where I should go. And I got my medical assisting degree there. And the biggest skill that really was life changer for me was I learned how to type. Because of that skill, I was able to, in essence, get an office job. So I went to a temp agency, and they placed me at a company that, again, changed my career, changed my trajectory. This company was in the business of lending, providing loans to small businesses. And they're the ones who really taught me how to lend. They're the ones that asked me to go back to college and get a degree in business, and they offered to pay for it, which was also life-changing, right? They created a tuition reimbursement program where I got reimbursed depending on my grades. So, if I got a C, they reimbursed me 70%. If I got a B, they reimbursed me 80%, and so on and so forth. So we didn't have any money. So it really was a motivating factor to get really good grades here. So they actually are the ones who paid for my education. So right when I graduated in 2000, so it was December 2000. So I guess I'm 01. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But when I graduated, the whole world opened up for me. I felt many opportunities came to me just from my relationships that I had created working for this prior company called MIDC. At that time, I was approached by Fleet Bank at the time, and many of you who are in the audience might know that Fleet Bank was bought out by Bank of America, which is where I work today. And the person who asked me to apply for this job at Fleet was actually someone who, at the end, ended up being my sponsor, which I had no idea what any of that meant. He was talking about me behind my back, telling the whole world that Jay should come and apply for this job at Fleet. We thought she'd be great at it, and I just, they thought I was great without me thinking that I was great. And I fought him on it, but I applied for the job. I got an interview with this gentleman, and he was amazing, and in essence made me an offer to come work for Fleet Bank back in 2000. So that's sort of how I started with the bank. I didn't know that I wanted to be a banker, and I became a banker. So that's how my career started at Fleet Bank, Bank of America. So what I'm hoping that you got from that answer was, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't necessarily have to have a plan, but have an idea. So start somewhere.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to unpack a little bit more of your story, because I think you touched on so many things that are interesting and applicable and relatable to a lot of our audience members. Being a non-traditional student is so much more common these days. And I think it's important to highlight that it's never too late to start, and that you can obviously have a very successful career as long as you just get going, right? And the opportunities that URI has afforded you and in addition to your own work ethic, has led you down a very successful path. So on that note, if we're talking about your connection to URI, as I mentioned already, you serve as a member on the board of URI, the URI Board of Trustees. How has your connection with URI grown and evolved over the years, and why is it important to you to be involved on the Board of Trustees?
So I will say to you that this is important on various levels. So for the obvious reasons, right? So, you can see how education can change our community, right? You can see that education, it can help close the wealth gap. So, overall education is super important to me, my family. My children's father works for URI as well. So for us, URI and education, very important. But I would say to you that as far as being involved in the Board of Trustees, it's an absolute honor for me to be there. I'll share a little bit about imposter syndrome with you as well later on. But what I will say is that representation matters. It's important to have someone who looks like you, feels like you, have experiences like you, represent you. So, what I represent is, I'm a Latina. I grew up in Providence. I'm a first-generation student of color, non-traditional student. So, that matters, right? Because I can bring that perspective, I feel, to the board. But I will say that having been on the board and many other boards that I sit on, information is powerful. So having been there and not only learning from the other Board of Trustees members and the staff, but just sort of seeing how the inner workings of a university, how it really works, because it's a balancing act, right? You're a board member there because you want to represent your community and have share your perspective, but also as a fiduciary, you want to make sure that the organization is doing all the right things, but it's also going to stay in business for in perpetuity to take care of the next hundreds of generations, right? So you want to make sure that there's balance there, and that role is, I think, a very important one as a board member. Hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I think it's so valuable having you on the board in the sense that you have a perspective, so many different perspectives, but also you've had the experience as a student, which is valuable to helping you understand the other side of it. So thinking about your time as a URI student, did you have an experience while you were a student at URI that made you look back and say, wow, that was life-changing, or that was such an important experience for me to have?
Yeah, God, there were many. But I will say again, I was non-traditional, so I went to URI at night in downtown Providence. So that was sort of my my experience at URI. Was never lived on campus. At times I wished I did, but again, I am where I am, so I'm happy. But I will say that there were a couple of things. So number one, when you asked me the question before, I thought, what was like this big aha moment? So there was when I first went to URI, I thought I wanted to start with finance. And of course, now I'm in finance, which is so interesting. But there was a teacher who was a complete jerk. He just turned me off about the field. He was just not a nice guy. And frankly, because of him, I switched majors to just general business in accounting, really. And it was the best thing that I could have done, actually, because now I absolutely adore accounting. For those of you who are in accounting, the love that you have for numbers. But I'll say on the opposite side, there was another experience that I wanted to share is there was an academic advisor. His name was Cleveland Kurtz. I'll never forget that guy. He worked as an advisor in downtown Providence. And I probably was in school for, I don't know, maybe a year or two. And he sat me down and said, what the heck are you doing? You are spending so much time and so much money taking these courses that you don't really even need. So why don't you sort of, in essence, like he just refocused me, right? He took what I had done and in essence said, why don't you try doing these various things so that you can finally, get your degree, because it took me a very long time to finally, get there. So I'd say that his taking the time to refocus me was really meaningful to me. So I think that's, that was one important experience that I think I wanted to share. Having a good academic advisor, having a good person in your corner to guide you through finishing is important for sure. So
I love that you, sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say just a shout out to all of the academic advisors that are at work for URI. Your job is incredibly important.
I think the fact that you remember his name to this day really drives home the impact that he made on you. And to your point, I think that's such a life lesson, having someone in your corner through all of life, even if it academic advisor, mentor, whatever it might be. It's so important, and it's definitely proof of how much of an impact they can have. If all these years later you still remember his name, and he probably has no idea he made such an impact, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit and talk about your career. You've had a very successful career and you've really worked your way up the ladder. Can you tell us about any challenges or obstacles you kind of faced along the way as you were building your career, and kind of how you overcame them?
Yeah, so there were many challenges. So I guess I'll start from the very beginning. So as I mentioned earlier, I started with the bank in 2000. Actually, it was March 2001. So I've been here 23 years, have loved every position that I've had, but every single position came with its challenges, right? But I would also say that every single position, someone took a chance on me. So my very first job was, this gentleman who I mentioned to you was my sponsor originally without me even knowing it. My first job was to open up accounts for small companies and, do credit and all these different things. And my first title was vice president, which I thought, how the heck does that even happen? I didn't know that there are a lot of vice president roles within the bank, but it was still a very I was honored to have been given that chance. But I realized that my first job was in essence selling, right? But I didn't know that I wanted to be a salesperson. That's sort of not what I want to do. It just sounds icky. It doesn't sound like the right, I went to school to do this. It just didn't match up. But then I changed my whole mindset around it, and I figured that I can, by learning the capabilities and the product set and all these various things that the bank had to offer, it was really my job to educate our community, our folks who didn't really understand how to use the bank. And I took that as a challenge, and frankly was successful doing it, and really loved it. But it was really, again, my whole mindset that it's not that I'm out here as a salesperson, right? It's that I'm here to provide a solution and to educate our community. What I would say is that my second position at the bank, I became a commercial lender, and that job was really the woman who ran the team back then. Her name is Laura DeSano. She's also an alumna of the bank of URI, excuse me, and she took a chance on me. She saw something in me that I didn't know I had, and she placed me in this room with all these other commercial lenders who were all very experienced lenders, all these guys who they all belonged to the country club, they all hung out together, they all went golfing together, and when I came onto the team, I was the youngest person on the team. I was the only female on the team. I was the only Latina on the team. And when I walked into the room and I, sat at my desk, surrounded by all these, great friends today, I just thought I didn't belong. I thought, Jesus, what am I doing here? How am I going to even be successful? How is this going to work? So it was tough for a few, I'd say it would seem like forever, but probably was just a few days. But I had to just change my mindset and say, yes, I belong. Yes, I am here for a reason. How do I make this work? And it was just my own sort of insecurities when I started that I thought I could never do this. And it wasn't until I changed my entire sort of mindset, and also not be afraid to ask questions and not be afraid to to approach people. That's really what changed my entire sort of 11-year career as a commercial lender. And all those folks who I thought, I didn't fit in with, they're my best friends today. They're folks who I work with still today. And they didn't know how to approach me. I didn't know how to approach them. And it just, that was just sort of, my own sort of insecurity, not feeling like I belonged in that space. And then I'll share one last thing, and I'm sorry, I know that I'm sort of going a
You're
little
fine.
long here on this one, but my third position, which is actually the job that I have today, now I'm in the private wealth management space. Same exact thing, right? So the person who ran the team before, he took a chance on me. He's the one that actually said to me, "Why don't you come to the private bank?" And I thought, okay, I grew up in South Providence. I'm Latina. I didn't go to Ivy League. I didn't. I don't belong to country clubs. All these different things that you sort of expect and that you think that that you need to have, that you need to look like, right, to work in the wealth management space. All those things were in my head. All these things are creations that I made, right, in my head, that I just didn't think I would ever belong in that space. I'm like, I don't, I'm not rich. How do I, come work in the wealth management space, right? And he said, you can absolutely do this. I think you can absolutely do this. And I went from working with, business owners, helping the companies, now working with business owners, helping them on the personal side, getting all my licenses and all of that. And my God, going back to school to get these licenses was tough, but it was a huge, huge challenge, but got it done. So I'm happy that I'm here, and this is probably one of the best career moves that I've ever made in my life, into my entire life, and I've been here now 10 years.
So would you say, as you advance through your career, even to where you are now, a senior VP, serving on the URI Board of Trustees, does this sense of, I don't belong, why would I be selected here, this idea of imposter syndrome, does it ever really go away?
That's a great question. I don't think it does. You just have to recognize it, right? It doesn't matter where you are in your career. It doesn't matter where you are, any place, frankly. You've got this little person that's sort of telling you, you don't belong, you're not good enough, or what are you doing in that room? Or, there's them and then there's you. That happens to the best of us. That happens, frankly, I think to perhaps you, everyone, I'd say. It's just a matter of you recognizing what that is and talking yourself out of that. I think I told you actually before, when we were practicing for this whole thing, I told you that I have a ritual in the morning.
Yes.
Tell myself, I'm like, I have it in my phone. I have it, right here on the phone where I have to remind myself, even when you're having a bad day, or even when you're thinking that you can't do something or whatever, because there's always going to be a challenge in life, whether it's personal, business, whatever it is, that, I tell myself, you are a badass. And I gotta read these because I think it's funny, but it's sort of my own way of getting started. Of course, my mind doesn't hear anymore, but anyway, but one of them is, you are amazing, you are incredible, you are smart, you belong, you are abundant, and you are highly favored. So I tell myself that in the morning, and then I blast the music, as I'm taking a shower or whatever, and that's the way that I get myself going in the morning. But it's tough, right? Because we all feel like, there's always somebody that's better than, and at the end of the day, they're not. You're just as good, and you do belong there.
I love that. I love that. I think the self-talk is so important. And I love to hear that you get yourself fired up every day to face the day and get yourself in the right mindset.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning, as you were moving up in the banking and your banking roles, you often found yourself being the only female in the room. And we have a lot of females on this call today, right? This is the Women in Leadership Speaker Series. So what could you say inspires you about the future of your industry, particularly for encouraging more women to get involved?
Well, there's so much that I think our industry has to offer. I get inspired by my clients. I get inspired by my colleagues. I get inspired by folks who I see who are interested in it, because I see that this place, not meaning here at the bank, but the industry itself is changing. I see that there's generational wealth that is being created and transferred. I see that I see, new companies being started by women. I see again, the influx of women in the field. That inspires me because, we as women, we're nurturers, right? And we all sort of grew up and we want to say, well, we want to take care of people. We want to, change the world. We want to help someone. But coming into this field, you in fact are helping someone. It doesn't matter if they have extra commas or extra zeros in their, in their account or whatever. You are helping someone by working with these folks who, they all just need a little bit of guidance or a little bit of help. Your job is to basically, take care of these folks. And any place in the finance field, you really truly are helping someone. I get inspired daily by my colleagues, my clients, people who are super smart that I'm surrounded by, and I'm learning every day by just hearing them, speaking to clients or hearing how they themselves are growing. So I grow every day just by hearing the folks who I'm surrounded by. But I would say, just back to your questions, I love and I would encourage whoever is listening, finance, business, marketing, anything sort of within this field, this industry is very rewarding. It really, really, truly is. And if you have any questions about the field, give me a call.
And I think it's so great to hear that we definitely at URI are pushing and encouraging more women to get involved in finance and other business related fields. So it's good to see that you hold out hope for more women becoming successful just like you in this field, and you're proof that it can happen. And we're hopeful that we'll see an increase in more women appearing just like you. So that's wonderful to hear. So what can Rhode Island businesses and policymakers do to help support women leaders and leaders of color in our state?
Boy, well, what I will say is this. Many companies offer tuition reimbursement programs. And many companies, I think, are already getting creative about how do they attract more students, more even folks who are looking to make career changes. I think what many business owners need to do better is to market it more. My organization has a tuition reimbursement program. As I mentioned earlier, the company that I worked for originally actually more like 25 or so years ago, they changed my trajectory, my life, because they, made me, first of all, made me go back to school to get a degree in something that was going to be supportive to them, but also I left college with no debt. And college debt is a big problem, right, in our country specifically, but we won't go there. But what I will say is that many companies locally should do more marketing around their support for their employees, educational aspirations. Again, for me, having left college with no debt was a true advantage for me. So I was able to now, in essence, get a job and be an instant contributor to the economy, right? Mm-hmm. So like rent an apartment, buy a nicer car, whatever I made, I didn't have to sort of go back to my debt, because debt is bad. But I think that's one thing that I think policymakers and, again, small businesses or businesses can do to support not just, again, women, but overall students, because just removing that burden from our students is super important. And again, a game changer, as it was for me in my career.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear Bank of America offers that opportunity.
They do.
For you. Absolutely. That's good to hear. So let's talk about reflecting on the mentorship and side of things, right? So did you have a mentor when you were at URI as a student or in your career who really motivated you? And if so, can you talk a little bit about the importance of mentoring and role models for aspiring female leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So at URI, I don't remember if I was a student, if I had a mentor, frankly. But what I will say is, because I was a full-time student and a full-time employee, I had mentors throughout my entire career. So again, the company who I worked for, I had a director her name is Denise Barge. She actually was my first female director at this, again, this is the company that I worked for before I joined Bank of America. I was young, right? I didn't really know much about, how to dress. I didn't know much about, how to even sort of be in a room networking. I knew how to talk to folks. I was never really shy about speaking to anybody, but she put me in the position to accept an award on behalf of the company. She sort of forced me to go out there and do business development for the company. She taught me how to dress. I would come to the office sometimes and she'd say, you can't really wear that to to the office. You can't, I was young, and Latinas, we tend to dress a little bit different maybe, or the way that I learned anyway. And she changed that in me. And so she was a huge role model for me. So I still am, talk to her today to this day, actually. There was another woman who actually took a chance on me here at the bank. Her name is, again, Laura DeSano. I mentioned her before. She took a chance on me and she ended up being my mentor throughout my entire career, really, as a lender. And, whenever I had any issues or any, the whole self-doubt thing, or, we would have these 15-minute coffee meetings with, that turned into sometimes half-hour coffee meetings with Laura. If anybody knows Laura, if she's even listening, all right. She would take the time to answer questions or to give you, feedback, whether it was positive or negative. The importance of having these people in your life, it's major. So if you don't have a sponsor or a mentor, I would encourage you to please find one. Everyone needs a cheerleader. Everybody needs someone that they can talk to that will basically tell you like it is, right? But also, be there to celebrate the small successes with you. What I would also say is that, you as a female, you can find either a female leader or a female sponsor. It doesn't matter. You just want someone that you're able to talk to. I think it's important also for many female leaders to sort of raise their hands to help others as well, because the folks who are working under you or around you are watching you. And, you have an audience regardless of whether you think you do or not, right? Either your colleagues or the folks who are working for you, with you. People are watching your moves, right? And they're creating an opinion about you. Just making sure that you sort of control a little bit about a little bit of the rhetoric, if you will. So by showing the soft skills, the being there on time, by being organized, by those soft skills that sometimes you don't really learn. A mentor can help you with that. So anyway, I went off on a tangent there, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think they're really great points. I'm curious, as you mentioned, you building your brand and your reputation, how people are watching, people are observing, people are noticing and formulating opinions. Do you think that becomes even more critical or more eyes are watching the further you've advanced in your career, or how has that changed at all?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kira. I'd say that people are always watching anyway, right? For whatever reason, I would say why it should matter to you. So some folks are of the opinion, your reputation, that people are going to say things about you either way. Some opinions don't matter. They all have impact, right? So I was telling one of my colleagues here, actually, I'm like, it's great because, when people continue to say, so I'll give you one perfect example, Kira. So many moons ago, I was asked to be on a board, and my original reaction was, well, what do they want me on the board? They're saying Jay is great. Jay is great. But what the heck does that mean? How do you know that I'm great? Why would you say that? Do you want me there because I'm a female, because I'm a Latina? Do you want me there because I work for it doesn't matter, right? So at that point, I was really very I questioned, their intentions. But what I ended up doing after some, again, soul searching and speaking to my mentors or whatnot, is so now that you have the opportunity to be at the table, what are you going to do with it? Mm-hmm. Now you have the opportunity to sit at the table and have a voice. I think that's incredibly important for you to be able to use your voice to, again, uplift others and help help move the needle for folks who are coming behind you.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think it's interesting also, once you're in as you've advanced your career, as you've grown into roles of more power, if you will, you have an opportunity to have more influence on things. And so it's a great thing to take advantage of if you're invited to be at the table, to use that for good and to help make a difference. That's a really
And I
powerful
guess,
statement.
and the point that I guess I was trying to make and all that, I'm sorry that I'm stepping in here again, but I didn't finish answering the question, was really around, people are still are gonna watch, right? So what do you want that reputation to be? What do you want folks to say about you? And I think not only, of course, being successful in doing the things that you need to do for your career, for your space, for the folks who are around you, but also doing those soft skill things that are super important. You want to be able to have people say, yeah, she's great because of this, or yeah, she always shows up on time, and yeah, she's at the table, but she's saying something, she's present. All those various things that I think we take for granted, that are, do you have the right attitude when you're showing up today? All those various things that, again, they're not
Like the academic things you're learning in the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kira. Yes, exactly that. So, how do you feel when you're next to this person? All those various things, they really, really truly matter. And I think we forget that part. You can teach people skills, right? You can teach people the various, like the thing that you want them to learn, right? But what you can't teach is the passion, the attitude, all those various things that are sort of the vaguer things that you don't really learn. I'd say, when you're going to school, right? Those are just as important.
I think that's a perfect segue into my next question for you, which would be, what advice do you have for women who are preparing to pursue a career in the field of finance or banking?
I would say go for it. Yes, it's a great career. The world is your oyster, honestly. Make connections, build relationships, market yourself. Rhode Island's a great place to launch a business career. I'll selfishly, of course, as a board member of URI, I will say to you, please stay in Rhode Island because it's a great place to be. But I would also say that here, you have the opportunity to be a big fish in a small pond. Rhode Island is a really, really special place, I will say. And again, in business, you've got so many different facets. You can go into marketing or finance or accounting, and all of those fields are amazing fields. But go out there and market yourself. I went to speak to a few students a few weeks ago, and I'm like, get on LinkedIn, find the folks who are hiring, or by the way, look for a company. Do you want to work for a large company or a small company? You've got all of that here in Rhode Island. If you want to work for call it, a Bank of America, and I'll just say that because that's where I work, but get in, get your foot in the door, just get into the place, right? Get a job there. And when you're there, then you can move around, right? Just start somewhere though, but make that move and make sure that you're marketing yourself, that you're talking to folks, let your intentions be heard, because otherwise, how are people going to know that where you want to go, what you want to be?
That's great advice. Now, before I move on, we have a couple more questions left, but I do want to make sure and put a plug to the audience. As a reminder, whenever we finish our questions that I've pre-populated for Jay, we would love to take questions from the audience. There is a Q&A feature in this Zoom call. I encourage you to enter your questions in that Q&A chat box. I will be asking them. They are anonymous, and if we're not able to get to them all today, I'm sure you'll be able to reach out to Jay. Would be happy to answer any kind of questions that you might have for after the call. But please go ahead and put any questions that you have for Jay in that Q&A chat box, and I will get to those in just a moment. So Jay, another question for you. On the other side of it, you talked about advice you would give to females looking to pursue a career in the field of banking or finance. On the other side of the equation, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best advice that I ever received. And you know what? It's the advice that I'm going to give to you at the end. So if you don't ask, you don't get. That is probably the best advice that I was ever given.
Who told you that? Who gave you
So,
that advice?
it was actually this woman, her name is Armitha Gibbs.
Mhm.
She actually used to work for the bank many, many moons ago. But she'd say, nothing ventured, nothing gained, and that just didn't get it at the beginning. And then, I translated, to if you don't ask, you don't get. And really what that means, who is a better advocate for you than you, right? So like, every year, I used to ask my former boss, what can I do to improve myself? What can I do to improve as an employee? What help me sort of be better. Whether that was, just learning a new skill or whatever it was, any certification or anything. Every single year during my review, I always go back and I ask the question, what do you think I could have done better? And then, by the way, also ask for whatever's next, right? Whether that's, more money or a different position or whatever it is. But if you don't ask, you're not going to receive. The answer is going to be no if you don't ask. We've heard that a million times. So I did get that advice from her 100 years ago, and I still repeat it to this day to anyone who asks. Because again, who's going to advocate better for you than yourself?
Yeah. And I would say, you might agree with this. I don't know. I think a lot of women, as females, we often are not good advocates of ourselves, and we are
Absolutely.
afraid to ask for it, right?
Yes. I'm so glad that you're saying that, Kira, because yes, everybody's heard this, right? We want to be perfect before we apply for that job. We want to make sure that we have all these things before we do that. We want to make sure that the answer is always no because of. No. You're perfect the way that you are. I mean, I'd say you have to ask the question. You have to make yourself be known, because I think what happens a lot, some managers might not, first of all, some, bad managers that they want to keep you sort of in that space and that role and don't want you to move. That's a bad manager, right? But you've got, if you have a good relationship with your manager or, whatever, a mentor, try to talk through, what is it that's getting in the way of you asking for that next thing? Is it that you feel like you don't deserve it? Well, no, the answer is that you do deserve it. Unless you had a really bad year, right? Of course, then you have to, your timing is important, right? But we're really awful at that. And, we don't want to come across needy or whatever it is. No, we have to advocate for ourselves. And I think that's many reasons why many of us don't move along, right? Move forward, or is because we're just too timid or too afraid to come across like we're being too whatever the words are, right? There's so many of them. You have to ask, you have to advocate. It's your responsibility, right?
I love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about philanthropy. A lot of what we do within our organization is based on philanthropy. It's about giving back, and you certainly do that in many different capacities, as we mentioned at the beginning of the conversation. Can you share your viewpoint around philanthropy? Why is it important? Why do you choose to give back in different ways to your community?
I think it's our responsibility. I mean, so I would start by saying, so philanthropy 101, right? You give your treasure to the organization that you spend the most time with, right? And it's a function of just getting more familiar with what they're doing. If you love what they're doing, if you see the impact that they're making, you want to be a part of that, right? So it feels great to be a part of that. So I serve on the URI board, as I mentioned to you, because, I see the impact that it has on our up and coming leaders, right? Our students. I serve on the Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island board because I see, because it provides health coverage to our most vulnerable. I mean, I see how one, health scare, one health issue can change someone's, life trajectory. I serve on things that, I serve on the United Way of Rhode Island board as well. I mean, I see how these organizations are making change. And I think, again, being involved is not only, it's a feel-good thing, right? So you see how these organizations are changing lives of people. But I would also say that it feels good for you to be civically involved. It feels good, I think, so that your family can see that's what you're doing too, so they can get inspired in philanthropy as well. I think it's our responsibility as you grow within your career, within your space. I think you have to share your knowledge with some of these boards that you sit on. So I've been on boards since I was in my 20s. And I didn't even know what it meant to be on a board, to be a fiduciary. I didn't know any of these things. But even at that young age, I learned so much. And what it did for me, it helped me network as well. And I didn't know that. I was just serving and trying to be of help. So what I would say is my viewpoint on philanthropy is you have to be philanthropic. You have, and it doesn't mean cutting $1 million check, because many of us can't do that, right?
Mhm.
But if you can give of your time, volunteering, putting together backpacks for students, whatever it is that you are, that you have a passion for. And even if you don't think they have a passion for something, just have a conversation with your mentors or others who are in the philanthropy space, to hear what it is that, what is the need out there, get involved. Because I think if you physically get involved by volunteering of your time, then, you're going to want to cut a check, or you're going to want to work harder so that you can cut that check, right? So that's my view, is that it's your responsibility to do it. And again, when you are involved, you are learning, you are getting educated around how these certain things, like what the needs are, and how these organizations are making an impact. So.
Thank you for that. So we're winding down on time, so I want to make sure I fit in some of these questions from the audience. I will tell you, Jay, you have some fans. You have some fans in the chat. You have some fans in the Q&A. So let me, I can share these compliments with you separately, but let's start with some of the questions. So first of all, we have a question that says, can you share your greatest setback and how you overcame it? We always focus on success, but failure is also an important part of the journey. Challenges will come our way, and how do we overcome?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I will say that, wow, biggest setback. That's a good one. I like that question. So, a lot of it is here too, and now I'm the worst when it comes to that, probably. So, sometimes things are not going the way you want them to go, right? So in my space, my job is to work with our clients and make sure that, we're bringing in new clients and all of that good stuff. Sometimes things are not exactly going your way. And what happens is, if you get one no, and then that next no becomes a second no, then suddenly you're like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? And what am I, is it me? Or, hey, my God, I'm 50. Am I too old? You have all these questions, or self-doubt. I'd say that the biggest setback that I've had, I would say probably was last year. I'll share. I was wondering, like, what is it? What is my purpose? What are you doing? Is this the right career? Is this the right place? Is this the right? You have all these things that a mind is a very powerful thing. It could sink you or it could raise you up, right? That my setback was me questioning whether I should even be here, right? Or meaning my career, right? Should I do something different? And then I realized, after having various conversations, that everyone goes through that. Everyone goes through wondering if you're in the right place, wondering if you're doing the right thing. It wasn't necessarily a setback, but it could have been worse, right? If you sort of make a trigger decision without really thinking it through. I had to remind myself that I love working with my clients, that I love working with my team, that I love what I'm doing, that I love making an impact, all these things that fill you, sort of help me sort of remember, why you're doing this stuff. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so. So I have another one. Let's see. How do you remain at the top of your game in your field when things are frequently changing?
Yeah, well, my reminders in the morning remind me that, that I'm a badass, right? I'm great. I'm gonna kill it today, right? And what happens is, many times, you start this way and then suddenly it's like, what I would say is make sure that you're reading, there are all these different white papers or new information coming out around, changes in upcoming laws or proposals in government, all these different things. The only way for you to sort of stay on top of your game is making sure that you're staying on top of the changes happening. And it's hard to do, right? Because you're a parent, right? You're a wife, you're a sister, you're an auntie, you're all these various responsibilities that you have as a woman or whatever, call it, whatever. You've got all these responsibilities, and then you want to make sure that you're like the best at in your career, then you're the best at this. The reality is you're not going to be the best at everything every single day. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay that today I'm not going to be the best performer in my job, but because I have to be at my son's game and I have to be here. Like you have to make sure that that you're not going to always be at 100% of everything every single day, but whatever you're doing at the time, be 100% there. So try to be present when you're there. At this, at work. So, the way to get better there is to continue to read, continue to learn, continue to have conversations with folks who are in your field, who are technicians, who are super smart and that you can learn from. That's what I do.
I love that. And this next question, kind of a great segue into the next question. How do you stay competitive among the next generation coming into your field, especially with new technology like AI?
Yeah, that's a great one. It's a great one. And that's a great question for a 50-plus-year-old woman because, you're seeing new folks coming into the field and you're like, the old person in the room, and you used to be the youngest person in the room. It's kind of interesting. But I'll say that change is inevitable. You have to be open to it. I know many folks who are no longer in the field because of that, right? Who just kind of fought against the grain at all times, and you can't do that. It's tough to do that because in every field that you're in, there's going to be change. What I will say is talk to your the peers who are coming into the field, and they're looking to learn from you just as you can learn from them. They have different style of doing things, right? So how can you somehow, take their style and yours and, improve both of you? Why not? There's space for every single one of us in this field. There really, really is.
I love that answer.
Yeah, and everything is not a competition, right? I think we can all be okay, right? If we're all playing nice in the sandbox.
It's almost like having kids or working in higher ed, right? The kids keep us young. We learn so much from them. We learn so much from younger generations that are coming in. I know I already experienced that working around college students, and they keep you educated, they keep you informed, and there's so much you can kind of learn from each other. So it can really be a really great partnership.
Yeah, and to answer the AI portion of the question, AI is changing every single industry, right? But I think it can improve many industries as well. There's some things that AI can help. Like you can create so many different things using AI. You can answer questions, using AI, but just double check your stuff. What I would add is, but AI cannot replace human touch, human interaction, the smile, so, and anything that we do, I feel it will require human interaction, right? You can't call a computer to ask, to talk about, my parents are passing, like real life things. AI can't replace that. And this is me speaking as not a computer or, technology person.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. So my last question for you today, Jay, is what is one takeaway that you would like our audience to leave with today?
That's my favorite. And I'll say to you what I was told many, many years ago. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. So, and even if the answer is no when you ask, then you try to improve and then you ask again.
I like that.
Why not? What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
So that's how I want to leave it, I think. Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Jay. I really enjoyed this conversation, really enjoyed speaking with you because you bring so much authenticity to the conversation. You have a very real experience that I think will inspire and motivate so many people. And I could see comments in the chat that they also agree. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Denise Hempy to close out our webinar today. And we'll have Denise join back in.
My honor, my pleasure to be here with you. Thanks, Kara, for your help. And go Rams.
Yes, Rhody, Rhody, Rhody.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it looks like Denise may not be able to join, so I'm going to go ahead and close it out. I know she was having, oh, here she is.
No, there I
There we
am.
go.
Yeah, I couldn't start the video. I needed permission to do that. But thank you
Technology.
both for this great conversation. I really loved your advice, and I wish someone had said that to me many, many years ago. And I firmly believe that now, and I definitely ask more than I ever did in my career. So I will second that advice for sure. To those that have joined us today for the webinar, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. And we hope that everyone has walked away with a nugget or two or three or four of information. In the coming days, you will receive a brief survey about the program. We ask you to take just a couple of seconds to complete the survey and share your thoughts on today's program so we can bring you more in this Women in Leadership speaker series and on topics that are of interest to you. So thank you, Kira. Thank you, Jay. It was a pleasure to witness this conversation.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies. Have a
All
good
right.
rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care.